Welcome to Ladies Talking Leafs. I'm Chris.
And I'm Sil.
And other than Mitch, Marner, and Craig Berube having a cup of coffee, there really hasn't been much Leaf news. But the NHL draft and free agency are only a few weeks away, and that's when we should start to get some news, at least, and some answers to the questions surrounding this Leafs team. Of course, the NHL and NBA playoffs are ongoing, and we just want to take time to remind you that BetOnline is your number one source for the NBA and NHL playoffs this season. Every stat, every matchup, and even live odds while the games are being played.
When the game's over, head on over to the online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker or unwind with one of over 150 slots games. Head to the website betonline.ag to get in on the action. Don't forget to use our promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. BetOnline, the game starts here. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know needs some support or advice, reach out to Connex Ontario or an organization near you. Place your limits and stay within it.
Okay, so starting off, we just want to say congrats to Leaf center David Kampf and Team Czechia, who won the gold medal at the IIHF World Championships. Kampf had 2 goals, 5 assists in 9 games, and scored the empty net goal in the third period to seal the gold medal game victory. That was quite the performance for them, winning on home ice, obviously. And I get how obviously European players are passionate about playing in front of their hometown fans. It's just this is their Stanley Cup, basically. This International Ice Hockey Federation championship, and Kampf also scored a goal and an assist to help Czechia defeat Sweden in the semifinal game. So he actually played a pretty big role. I wish he would do more of that with the Leafs.
He has been had his best offensive performances in seasons with the Leafs in the NHL.
True.
So there is that. He was amazing in the faceoff circle again for Czechia. And he probably got more ice time with that team than he's going to get with the Leafs.
For sure.
So there is that.
Yeah. And he was playing higher up the lineup, I think, too. Yeah. So he,
for sure.
And another player that actually I just read about that had a good tournament was Pontus Holmberg with Team Sweden. Mm-hmm. He had 6 assists and played on their second line. And I think they said that he really, he was strong in his back checking and just his commitment to defense, and that really, really showed. So that was good to hear too. So a couple of Leafs having good tournaments. Unfortunately, John Tavares is not so good, but whatever.
Well, he scored some big goals for Team Canada though, so no slouch, and also is his usual great self in the face-off circle.
Yeah. So individually, he had the good.
But unfortunately, a little bit too much of the same thing that we're used to with the Leafs demise, and some of the same quotes as well, which was not so fun to hear about lessons needing to be learned and such.
Yeah. I heard the word lessons. I didn't hear the one that was really interesting. We're right there. Remember when he said, a lot of them say we're right there. Mm-hmm. It's like, where? Exactly. Yeah. But anyhow,
Anyway, I think it was good for him to be over there. Obviously, he wants to keep up his physical fitness level. Probably why he went there. And as far as any of our other Leafs prospects that are any of the teams that had success, that's good for us as well, because it's good to be on teams that win. So so good for David Kampf for having that experience.
Good to have the positivity at the end of a season. Yeah.
And we also want to say congratulations to Team Minnesota on winning the PWHL championship, beating Boston 3-0 in the 5th and deciding game of the series. I just think that's just so interesting that they were picked by Team Toronto.
Yeah.
They singled them out and then they go all the way. So you know what? It's hockey. Doesn't matter what league it is.
Yeah.
Anybody can win when it comes down to it, and you're in the playoffs. So good for them.
That was
bad,
crazy.
I guess some similar Toronto bad luck for Team Toronto with Natalie Spooner getting injured. So
Yeah.
again, we got that little bit of an excuse, like what would have happened, if she didn't get hurt. But
Yeah.
yeah.
She's only one player, right? So
True.
yeah. Yeah. Although she was having a fantastic playoff, but
Mm-hmm.
but the thing that I was watching, I guess the semifinal, or not the semifinal, the fourth game of the series between Minnesota and Boston, and that overtime goal that got overturned.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, it was like insane. Like to see the I guess this Minnesota players, they were all like screaming and throwing their gloves and everything, and then it's like being reviewed, right? It was goaltender interference, like definitely you could see that, but and then I
So
thought
it's
to
the right
myself,
call.
yes, but then I thought to myself, I wonder if this is gonna like how it's gonna go, because Boston ended up winning that game to take it to a fifth game, and then I thought, you know what, I'm thinking probably Minnesota's gonna go into Boston and win it just because of that goal being taken away from them. It's going to galvanize them to want to win the whole thing, and then just the thing like their Stanley Cup, the Walter Cup, and seeing the women, I think it was their captain Kendall Coyne Schofield, like lift it up on there and take it around the ice. It was cool. It was a cool moment for them. I was happy for them to get
and
that.
We're going to get to see more of it for years to come, and it's hopefully that team is going to even that league's going to grow even more, and they're going to be selling out. Obviously, they've shown this year that they can sell out big venues, so it's going to be interesting to see what changes come in for next season even.
Yeah, for sure. I think
I'm looking forward to finding out what their logos and their team nicknames are going to be.
Yeah, that's when we might be starting to buy some merchandise, right? We haven't bought any merchandise yet. We haven't even got to a game. We got to get to a game too.
Yeah.
But they were all sold out by the time we figured things out.
All right, so now it's time to get on with the show, and we're going to start off with a Leaf Talk segment where we will give our thoughts on a couple of Leaf-related articles that caught our attention. And then for the third period segment, we welcome Toronto Sun columnist and author Lance Hornby to get his thoughts on the Leafs and what could happen leading up to the draft and free agency. So without any further ado, let's talk Leafs.
Okay, so it's about a month since the Leafs exited the Stanley Cup Playoffs, although it seems like a lot longer than that, but it's a month almost. And but as always, there's a lot of Leaf content because there are just a lot of questions about this team as we get closer to the draft and free agency. So the one article that caught my eye was by James Tanner from the blog Editor and Leaf, and basically the gist of this article was that the Leafs haven't given enough opportunity to their players in the organization, the younger players, to succeed with the big club. And instead, over the past several seasons, they've brought in veteran players from outside the organization to fill in their roster. And yeah, I can see, I mean, in the article, it lists like 23 players. I'm not going to mention them all, obviously, but a few of them, like he said in this article, Marleau, Thornton, Aston Reese, Nick Ritchie, Colin Blackwell, let's just say. Are these guys so much better than, let's just say, Roni Hirvonen, Bobby McMahon, because Bobby McMahon just came up this year, Mikko Kokkonen, or Alex Steeves? Alex Steeves has had a cup of coffee once. I don't know how many games he played, but it's not enough. Like those names compared to the previous names, like I just think if you actually gave these kids an opportunity, you never know, you might find that gem, as he mentioned in the article.
Well, and
right?
other teams do. You know what I mean? Like
rather than keeping them down in the Marlies and letting them percolate down there, and they're learning, and like they need to have that AHL experience because a few of them are from Europe, obviously, Hirvonen and Kokkonen and like Topi Niemela. We don't even know what in the world that guy is like, and he was supposed to be such a fantastic prospect, right? Like for us, and he hasn't even gotten one game yet in the NHL.
Yeah, so. Like at some point, a player is only going to get so much better being down there. They need to be challenged in a different way. They need to kind of be up there with the big club to kind of see, you know, how it works, like what being a pro at that level means. You know, it's very different.
Yeah.
You
In
know,
some
even just the
ways,
way you're treated and, you know, taking the
yeah,
flights everywhere and the nutrition and all of that. And the schedule is different too. You know, like
totally.
they
Yeah.
play a lot of their games in series because they take the bus and, you know,
Yeah.
then they're playing, you know, I don't know how many games in a row, as
Yeah.
opposed to, you know, the days on and off, on and off. So there's a lot of differences. And, you know, I agree with somewhat with that article that, you know, at some point you're going to have to give these guys more than a game here and there,
Yeah.
opportunity
Yeah.
to play.
Yeah. And I think that's where possibly, I don't know, things will change with like GM Brad Treliving. Like he's going to look at what's on the Marlies
Mm-hmm.
because you need these two when it comes to the salary cap too, right? These
For sure. Like
players.
that's where
Yeah.
you get your cheap talent from, you
Yeah.
know? And the
Yeah.
thing is, those guys are young as well and
Mm-hmm.
hungry. They're not free agents that are on like coming into the tail end of their career. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like
Yeah.
they can get better as opposed to those players. You're expecting them gradually to get worse. So yeah, I think that there's a lot more upside in that regard as well.
Yeah.
And definitely we need as much savings as possible. And with the forwards that we have there, if we can utilize some of those players, I think the article was talking about, you know, then you have the ability to maybe spend a little bit more on bolstering your defense, you know,
Yeah.
because that's one thing we don't have down there
That's true. Yeah.
is a lot of good defensive prospects potentially, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And Pontus Holmberg is another one that like he just had his first season
mhm.
like this season. So like with the Leafs. So why not? Why couldn't he have come up last season? Like instead
And
of
stuck a little longer, yeah.
yeah, instead
Because
of
he's had a cup of coffee like a couple
yeah,
times,
yeah,
but
instead of like
never
Colin
really stuck.
Blackwell, let's just say, because I
Yeah.
think Blackwell was last season, or Aston Reese was here last season. I know that definitely. Zach Aston Reese, like, is he that much better when you look at it? I don't think so. Right? Like to say what exactly for, I mean, you don't obviously they're fourth line players. They're not getting a lot of ice time, those players. But then you never know if they prove themselves, they would get more ice time. So it'll be interesting to see how Craig Berube handles
Yeah,
things that way.
I assume that he's going to be making his own evaluation and seeing
Yeah.
if some of the guys that are down there have, you know, some of the skill set and characteristics and qualities that he would more be looking for. So,
Yeah.
so we'll see.
Yeah.
So the article that I chose appeared in the Hockey Writers newsletter this past Saturday with the annual disappearance of the Leafs power play, particularly when it counts in the playoffs. This story, written by Peter Barancini, caught my attention as he discussed the potential hiring of Mark Savard as assistant with the Leafs, because he has that history with Craig Berube from St. Louis. And he was talking about how Savard's approach to the power play might be a good fit with the skills of our roster. So one of the things that the article talked about is that, you know, his Savard's philosophy is very much about letting your skilled guys sort of have a little bit more free reign and use their creativity. And with that, then you have the potential for, you know, not being as predictable. And we definitely have those types of guys that, you know, like if you just look at Willie and Mitch Marner, if he's potentially still here, you know, Austin, these guys can make things happen in a creative way. So that philosophy, I think, definitely will work well with the types of players that we have. And the other thing that really stood out to me is his record for coaching. 2019, 2020, he was with St. Louis, and the power play was third overall in the league. Then he coached in Windsor for 2 years, and it was third and second overall in those 2 seasons. Last year with the Calgary Flames, not so great, 26th overall, but then you could argue that maybe he didn't have the personnel that really meshed with his philosophy potentially. So, you know, 3 out of 4 is not bad, finishing at the top of the leagues that you're in. So, anyway, those are the things that kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, the when you're mentioning like his record, I guess last season with Calgary, it was it actually what impressed me was the because at first I was thinking, I don't know. I'm like I was reading a lot of articles on him, and I'm thinking, oh, we're just Berube's just going to bring in his crew from St. Louis, and what we're going to become the St. Louis Blues
Mm-hmm.
reincarnation sort of thing, right? But he actually it started off bad, but then after February 1st, Calgary's power play was at 24%, good for 12th in the
Mm.
in the
So
league. It meant
improved
yeah,
throughout the season, which
yeah,
I guess, in a way that can kind of make sense because that's his first year with the club.
yeah,
So, finally getting that message home maybe
yeah,
took a little bit of time.
yeah.
But anyway,
And
yeah, that's kind of what you
yeah,
want to see, it getting better and better.
yeah.
And I mean,
And
if
like
he were to
you're
come to Toronto, because obviously that still remains to be seen.
yeah.
It's just like every coach that's mentioned as leaving their club, mutually parting ways or whatever, is touted to be coming to Toronto. But
Yeah.
anyway, if he were to come, it might be a little bit of a breath of fresh air that way.
Yeah. And at least and I just hope that they like the way you were mentioning too, like give the players the opportunity to show their skill over
Mm-hmm.
having the set plays. That was also in
Exactly.
the article, right?
I mean,
Like,
obviously you're going to have some,
oh
but
yeah,
I
yeah,
think these guys need to be given, a bit free reign to improvise
yeah,
in
yeah,
those
and
moments.
that's the predictability part of it, right? Like you're not going to be
100%. Yeah.
predictable. You can have those set plays once in a blue moon or once in a
Mm-hmm.
while, and just get rid of that drop pass a lot. Basically, if they
Yeah.
could drop pass in the neutral zone to get the player, I don't know. I
Interestingly, though, like at the beginning of the season, they weren't doing that as much,
no,
but it
I
just
know.
seems like that becomes their comfort zone, and they
Yeah,
fall back into that when they're struggling. Um,
yeah,
so anyway,
yeah,
hopefully we'll see less and less of that stupid drop back pass,
yeah,
and it's just it wouldn't be so bad if they dropped it back and then tore up the ice, but they don't seem to do that. So
yeah. But, anyways, our listeners, you can check out our show notes where you'll find links to these articles and others that we highlight as part of our show. But the Stanley Cup playoffs are still going on. So we just want to talk a little bit about that. The Florida Panthers have punched their ticket to the finals, and they wait for the winner of the Western Conference final between the Edmonton Oilers and the Dallas Stars. So are you happy Florida got through to the did you like their Prince of Wales where they were like not touching it? They weren't like
well, I
going
mean,
near
I
the
guess it's
trophy.
it's a 50-50 thing. They touched it last year, didn't work
Yeah,
out. So
yeah,
don't touch it this year. I love that little when they moved to Maurice on the bench
yes,
and
yeah,
he said, "Don't touch it."
yeah.
I love
I,
that guy.
yeah,
Actually, I'm super happy for him
yeah.
because
Well, you
I
loved
loved him
him
when he
as
was
a
a Leaf
Leafs.
coach too.
Yes, I was just gonna say that you loved him as
Yeah.
a Leafs coach. That was
Yeah.
one of your favorite
I'm a
coaches.
big Paul Maurice fan. So,
Yeah,
obviously he's super comfortable there. Like I don't think I've ever seen him as comfortable in his skin as he has been in Florida.
yeah,
So that mojo's working for him there. Am I happy that they're going to be getting a second crack at it? No, but is it deserved? Kind of, yeah, because they've been a machine,
yeah,
and I don't know, like it's a similar recipe to how Vegas did it, and I kind of feel like it's the same story for any teams that aren't getting over the hump. Their star players are kind of being neutralized, and it seems like the teams that really play that complete team concept where everybody has the same responsibilities and there are no cores singled out that are expected to do it all. Those are the teams that are playing that effective playoff hockey, and Florida is definitely got that recipe. So
oh for sure, yeah, and
because like I mean look at in New York, like Panarin disappeared. Like I was
yeah,
looking at the New York Rangers fans tweets yesterday,
yeah,
and the criticisms of him, like you could have just replaced Mitch Marner with Panarin, and it is the same tweet, you know.
Yeah.
Zero points this year, 1 point last year, like no goals. Like, so
no,
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Shesterkin played fabulous.
Oh my God.
Like there was no way that he could
have been gone in 4 if it wasn't for him. Like, I feel sorry for him because I really like him as a player too.
Yeah.
Seeing him a little bit behind the scenes when we went to the All-Star game, kind of gives you a little bit of different perspective on some of these guys. And it was so sad for him because he worked his butt off.
Yeah. And one thing I was trying to find it while you were talking there on X, I saw just about an hour or so ago, there was somebody that tweeted out or posted this thing saying, it was ridiculous. Would you want Austin Matthews or Sam Bennett on your team? And I'm like, oh my God, what a comparison. It didn't even deserve a reply, so I didn't reply, but I was just like,
well, the truth of the matter is I would like to have both. But
True,
I don't want to give up Austin for that. What I want is for the right guy to come along to make these guys play a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
To be able to get through these things and not be taken off their game. But we are seeing, though, that they are not the only ones that it happens to.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody who doesn't win, who doesn't make it to the final dance, it happens to them too.
Yeah.
So I guess, we're recording this on Sunday, just before Edmonton, Dallas. We'll see, I guess, if this is a complete trend for everyone, because truly, if skill still matters, then Edmonton should win.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And going to that series, just moving.
But then again, Draisaitl, that guy is a killer.
Yeah. Yeah. He's like the machine of the Oilers. And one thing I did think of too, there's like obviously Zach Hyman and Connor Brown. Connor Brown has really played well in this series. Like he's
elevated his game for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I still question, just because Stuart Skinner is not out of the 4 goalies that were in these final 4 teams, like he's the bottom of that. And
but you know what? He has shown up though in big moments when it's counted and kept his team in some of those games that they weren't playing that great. So I don't know. It's
the only thing I don't like there too is Corey Perry coming in into the series.
Well, like my husband says, though, if he plays tonight, he has a history of not making it all the way. Like even if they make it, they probably won't win if he plays, because he tends to get there but not win the big prize. So
yeah. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. There's also the Memorial Cup, which is today. So we'll see what happens there with Easton Cowan and the London Knights playing the Saginaw Spirit. So we'll see what happens there.
Our next show is June 19th, and with the way the Stanley Cup final schedule is set up, we most likely will get a chance to give our thoughts on it then. But right now we have a great guest for our third period segment. Toronto Sun columnist Lance Hornby joins us to talk about everything Leafs.
Okay, so for our third period segment, we are welcoming to the show Lance Hornby from the Toronto Sun newspaper. Lance has covered the Leafs and the NHL as a reporter for over 40 years with the Sun.
Lance is also an author of a number of books on the Maple Leafs, where he gives readers an inside look into the historical franchise. He also follows the team every day, whether they're home or away. And we want to welcome Lance to our show once again. So thanks for coming on with us again, Lance.
Thanks a lot, ladies. You've done great things with this podcast, and I hear great feedback from my media colleagues and also through listeners. It's congratulations on I guess it's been 2 or 3 years now you've been at this and doing quite well.
Yeah, it's actually 5.
5, okay.
Yeah, so it's 5 years.
No, I don't count the COVID years. That's not a...
Oh, that's true. Maybe we shouldn't count those either.
Yes, I count those like a lockout.
Well, thank you very much for the feedback. We really appreciate it. And you basically helped us get our start. So by writing about us. So we really appreciate that so much.
Oh,
and
I'm
we
glad I
have
could do my part. You guys took the ball and ran with it. It's great.
and we have that article on our everywhere across our social media as a
Mhm.
link, so
Oh, great,
our
great, great.
listeners can always go back and see that. So yeah, let's get into it. Starting with the hiring of Craig Berube. Do you think he is the right coach to finally get this Leafs team to go deep in the playoffs, at least past round two, or maybe never
Well,
mind round one? We can't
yeah,
get past round
yeah,
one.
yeah. Well, it's interesting that I so many people wanted Sheldon Keefe out of there, and now that he's gone, everyone says, okay, well now what do you do? I mean, certainly you want a coach in there who can do better at playoff time. It's a long way to playoffs, though. It's an 82 game season, and if there's one thing Sheldon Keefe was good at, it was getting this team to play cohesive hockey most of the regular season, getting 100 points, which he did 3 times in a row, and of course.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately hitting the wall at playoff time. We shouldn't say that they were, outclassed at playoff time. Just had great difficulty pushing themselves over that hump, especially in deciding games, whatever they're 0-4 or 0-5 under him, and going back to Mike Babcock too, of course. So it's having Berube there will be interesting because he'll be a guy who believes in connections. That was a word that came up 5 or 10 times during his introductory press conference. Here's a guy who wants to have a good rapport with players, and hopefully that will be enough that come playoff time, they will understand his philosophy, and that a big role change. We'll throw it out there, such as a Marner or something, if he's still here, but I'm sure we'll deal with that later. But having a skill player take a third line role. If you talk to anybody from St. Louis, and I had a great chat with Kelly Chase, the former Maple Leaf and lifelong St. Louis Blue, he was very adamant that Berube was able to get through to a player like Alex Steen, Tyler Bozak, whom Leaf fans are familiar with, getting them midway through the year to buy in and say, okay, you will have a less glamorous role. You'll be on what would equate to a third or fourth line, but this will lead to team success, and you have to accept that role. And Chase said, I know Toronto. That's going to cause a big kerfuffle, as would it be if suddenly you see Nylander or somebody else of note show up on the fourth line. But he says it only has to happen once or twice. Players will adjust. It'll probably create a big stir at the time. But by playoff time, when he makes those moves and those switches are required by whatever, depending on which opponent they face, depending on injuries, that kind of thing, they'll be familiar in that role and there won't be any blowback. So that's what he's trying to build during the year, that kind of connection with the players, so they know what's going on, that kind of thing. Now, the Maple Leafs, as currently constituted, are not the St. Louis Blues, of course, of 2019 that Berube led to the Cup. They're not as heavy a team. Certainly, they're more skilled. It'll be interesting to see how Craig is able to get some of those guys to buy into that hockey. But you know what? Even Marner and Matthews are pretty good defensive players. Matthews up for the Selke, Marner, high up in block shots, that kind of thing. So I think the talent's there, and you certainly saw William Nylander make the adjustments he had to play, and you've already got the makings of a heavy defense on the Leafs. So you throw in some goaltending, which is also important, and that's what helped St. Louis win the Cup in 2019. And maybe you have all the ingredients there.
Well, actually, just listening to you describe what Kelly Chase said, like the former coach that we've had in the past that comes to mind is Pat Burns.
Yes.
Like, do you think that he's like a similar kind of mold there?
That's an interesting comparison, but a little later, I mean, Pat Burns was great at the time, had the perfect, all of the Cliff Fletcher was pushing the right buttons. Burns pushed the right buttons behind the bench, and that was certainly a great time. And then, you've seen different incarnations come and go, tough coaches, not tough coaches. I guess the interesting thing would be, remember, Mike Babcock was supposed to be the guy who was going to no nonsense come in, crack the whip, and these, this thing would turn around based on his experience. And of course, we all know that sort of went south, and maybe he wasn't the best guy to play with a younger group of players. And what happened? Everyone was very happy to see him go. The whole thing was, let these kids, take the reins off. Let Matthews, Marner, Nylander, let them run free, and they're, they'll score a whole bunch. Everybody will be happy, and the Leafs will win the Cup. Well, what happened was, unfortunately, they took a took a different turn. It turns out that they've not developed both in toughness and maybe on ice maturity. Maybe you see that a little bit in come playoff time. Interesting to see for Nylander, for example, in the full circle he's made from the guy who was allegedly the perimeter player who wasn't going to help anybody to turn around to become a very strong playoff performer. But it didn't quite work, and then suddenly everyone's talking about Sheldon Keefe, saying, "Well, it's not hard enough. We need a tough coach who's going to show these guys like Marner and all that what to do." So here we've come full circle from Mike Babcock back to that kind of coach, and those kind of coaches have a limited shelf life. I think the Yellers and the Barkers. I mean, if you get them going, if you hit them at their peak and they have the right team, 2 or 3 years before the message starts getting tuned out. So Sheldon Keefe was able to last 4 years, special circumstance. Of course, he came in with Kyle Dubas and that sort of thing. But it'll be interesting to see now with Berube there, and he is Brad Treliving's guy. So, the next couple of years will be very important. And obviously, one of the big questions is he going to be able to coexist with a player like Marner?
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, we'll still stay on the coaching front because there is a lot of talk about various assistant coaching departures from clubs around the league. And of course, everyone is then linked to the Leafs. There haven't been any announcements as to, which coaches on the current staff are going to be let go. So what are you hearing and how do you expect Berube to round out his staff?
Well, first of all, let me say I'm very grateful the Leafs didn't pull one of their specials of announcing something at 4:59 on a Friday. That was a fair, like they did with his hiring, like they do with other things. We're hoping for a difference in, in Brad Treliving, but he's followed the time-honored tradition of announcing things at the end of the day after everybody has left the arena. So anyway, nothing happened on that front this week. The buzz was Mark Savard being let go, first of all, in Calgary, who has ties to Berube, and that was that has not happened yet. And then Mike Yeo, who has the roundabout connection to Berube as being the coach who was fired in St. Louis when Berube was assistant, and then got Berube getting promoted and then winning the cup in that same season. So there is a tie there. Mike Yeo is from Scarborough as well, and so a lot of people are connecting the dots there. But a lot of people think he's going to take the job in Ottawa with Travis Green as the new head coach there. So nothing announced there. I think there's I'm guessing they've gone through their preliminary interviews with the current staff. That would be, of course, Guy Boucher and Dean Chanuth. And Mike Van Ryn, who's probably going to stay based on his connection to Berube on that 2019 Cup team. So pencil him in to stay. Maybe Guy Boucher, who took all the flack for the misfiring power play, will stay. He's still a very good coach, but maybe he has that duty removed. Maybe that goes to Savard or Yeo, who have some experience in that in those departments.
Yeah. So do you think, like, the fact it's always the connection with the coach going back to his former, like bringing in his former staff, sort of like, I don't know. I'm not liking that kind of. It's like we're not the reincarnation of the St. Louis Blues. Like the team is totally different, right? And by bringing in the assistants, like I know the head coach knows those guys, like Berube knows them, but wouldn't it be better to just find somebody who's the best available option?
Yeah, but there's a comfort level for the coach too, and sometimes I'm not saying this as 100%, but Berube might take the job and say, okay, I'll take this job if this, that, or other coach can, come with me, and that kind of thing. And sometimes the coaches want to move on, like Manny Malhotra did, going back to Vancouver, which is where he has some ties and that kind of thing. And, Spencer Carberry, who was there before, who did a very good job with the power play. Obviously, he was head coaching Timber, and Washington scooped him up. So interesting to see. Maybe the Leafs are also waiting to see, I can't say I'm familiar with this, but somebody with the 4 surviving teams at the end of the year may decide that they're moving on somewhere, and maybe they weren't even on the radar, and now suddenly they're doing a lot of special teams work or something that has caught the Leafs' eye, and they will ask permission to talk to those guys at the end of the playoffs.
Yeah, because I heard Mark Savard too. They said that Calgary's power play wasn't that good last season, right? So it's like, why would you get somebody that? I mean, we're already complaining.
Calgary's power play doesn't have Matthews and Marner and Nylander, and now
very true.
Yeah.
flip side is, Guy Boucher had all that, and for whatever reason couldn't make it work when it counted. And I think it was at one point obviously doing very well during the season. So that is a big mystery why the Leafs don't do better there. And not having the big bomber from the point with a
Yeah.
a hard shot has always been their weak spot in the certainly through the Mike Babcock and Sheldon Keefe years. And other things may shake out that they may get somebody like that who can really bring it.
Mhm.
All right, so let's move on to a little bit of the players. We're going to say other than the future of Mitch Marner and John Tavares contract talks, what do you think is the biggest area that GM Brad Treliving needs to address this summer? The biggest
Well,
area of the
yeah,
team.
well, you know what I mean. There's major holes in three areas. They've got to, in the top six. You have the potential to lose both Domi and Bertuzzi. I'm sure Domi wants to stay. And then you go down a little further to the defense, and a bunch of those guys are free agents. Just going off my list here, which I covered up with something else. I can't see it right now, but
Well,
I mean that's Labushkin, Edmondson. Those guys are he's got to
yeah,
convince those guys to come back. I think you're going to see the end of Giordano. He's going to make a graceful exit, and I think the time has come to move on from TJ Brody. As much as he's helped the team, he didn't look comfortable all year long, and there might be a change there. And then you go down to the goaltender. You only have one signed goaltender right now in Joseph Wall, and Samsonov loves the city, would love to come back, but they're going to have to reach some kind of whatever hometown discount or whatever the term is, because I think as much as he wants to play more and be I like him. I think when he's on, I think that was one of the most dramatic comebacks I've ever seen from a Leaf goalie who everybody wanted out of town. And then he goes on a stretch of whatever it was, 24-6-1 or 2 or something like that. So I'd like to have him back, but he thinks he's earned a raise, and there's going to be some pushback there. There's rumblings that Martin Jones is okay to come back as the third guy, even though he's not going to be playing much. I'm sure he likes it in Toronto, so it'd be interesting to have that wrapped up. And you don't know what Dennis Hildeby is still, I think, needs some work
yeah,
down there. Just being tall is not enough. I think but he certainly did well for the Marlies, and depending on what his workload is over the summer in terms of training and working with Curtis Sanford, the goalie coach, if he's coming back, I think, and the Marlies goalie coaches as well, I think there's going to be a very good chance that he makes some noise at camp as well. And I can't see the Leafs holding him as a backup or a third guy and not using him. He's better suited to play regularly on the farm if he's not going to play in Toronto. But just saying that gives them, an interesting. Who heard of Felix Potvin, for example, in 1992-93? He got off to a great start, and suddenly he took the reins, and the Leafs were able to trade Grant Fuhr. And I guess the wild card in all this is Matt Murray, who is, who's worked his way back when everybody thought he would never play again. He got in a couple of games at the end with the Marlies. He's still, I think, just crowding 30 years old. He's still useful. There would have to be some huge discount going on there with a new contract. But, I think...
I guess that would be desperate, desperate times, I think.
But you know what? He desperate, he might be desperate himself. There's not many people who are going to take a look at him. And I think because the Leafs spent all year, all their resources getting him ready to play at the end, he may try and repay the club, for lack of a better word, to be that Martin Jones guy, if indeed Jones isn't brought back.
Right. Yeah. So basically, everywhere the team needs help because.
Well, yeah. I mean, the big thing is, if they can bring back Domi and Bertuzzi at a good price, they still have cap constraints and everything. This is the big cap year too. I mean, it's if they're forced to pay Marner, it's the last year of Tavares's big deal. It's if they can get by this year and the cap goes up, I think they're in much better shape beyond. But it's easier said than done. Brandon Pridham has his work cut out for him if indeed the Leafs are trying to bring back at least one of Domi or Bertuzzi, fix up the defense, get a decent goaltender. It's going to take some juggling, and that juggling may turn out to be the money that they were going to spend on Marner, and again leads us to that whole question of whether he goes away or tries to come back.
What do you think of the idea though of like punting on the year? I guess you think they would do that like for not to drop out totally, but because they have this salary issue with Mitch Marner and John
Yeah.
Tavares, like if they just kind of let it go to the end and kind of see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
and then start
yeah,
off it like, and then if Marner goes away or
yeah,
John
start off
Tavares,
next year. It's interesting. It'd be a very, in many ways, their hands are tied. They may have to do that because they don't have any. But you know what? I think all teams like certainty, and they would like to know the number of the dollar figure that they're going to work with. I
yeah,
would, I'm a proponent of having Marner come back. I think there's a piece of him the same way he's sort of petulant. If you see him in interviews all the time, and he kind of nitpicks and he doesn't like being criticized and all that kind of thing, and sometimes he's not. He's got a little bit of a little bit of the brat in him, for lack of a better word. I can see him channeling that attitude to next year and saying, "I'll show you guys. I'll adapt. I'll be, I love this town. My Marner Foundation is here. I'm going to show you guys that I can be a team player." Now that would have to come, obviously, that's bracketed by whatever is going on with his new contract, which the Leafs can freely discuss beyond July 1st with a new deal and that sort of thing, and talk extension and all that. I don't think the Leafs are willing to go too far into that without knowing if he's going to waive his no trade or not. But I can see Marner being part of it, playing ball. Lots of people, Toronto being the kind of place where there seems to be a scapegoat during the summer at the end of the year, and it's switched off from Nylander, sometimes Matthews, sometimes it's the goaltending. It seems to be Marner's going to be the target. Everybody figures he's not going to come back, but I can see him, saying, "I'll show you guys. I'll do, I'll make I'll make my presence known," and then he'll But that
it's like it's like I said to our insider Mike Agello, Mike in Buffalo.
Yep.
He's gonna have it come back. He won't sign the contract. He'll have the great year next year, and we'll go right to the Stanley Cup Finals. Like he'll just drive our whole team, Mitch Marner.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I know.
you never know.
Stranger things have happened, but I just think the Leafs would want some cost certainty. They want to know, because I could, if I'm putting myself in Brad Treliving's shoes, I'd like to know, is he going or staying? And now I have whatever Marner makes about 10.9, I think. Geez, I'd love to spend that on a point defenseman or fixing myself up in goal, or channel that money towards Bertuzzi or Domi. So I think they want an answer from Marner one way or the other. Interesting, of course, that the stories coming out about Marner and Berube talking. So at least there's something there. And I think Berube has probably had less talented players who are able to adapt. I think knowing that Marner can kill penalties, and he's clearly not afraid to block shots. If he can get inside his head and settle things down, then I think things can be settled. Marner holds all the cards, though. As much as people might want him out of town, if he doesn't move off his no trade, then they have to stay with him or stuck with him, for lack of a better word.
Well, you just brought it up. So another person who once held all the cards is Matt Sundin. So,
Right.
We're wondering, knowing what happened with that, which could be the uglier storyline and between the two of them, when it all shakes out in the end.
Well, you know what? It was very sad the way as somebody who covered Sundin from the moment he came to the moment he left. It was very sad that he didn't retire a Leaf. He wound up in the same boat as Keon, Sittler, all those other great Leaf captains and high scoring captains, and didn't retire as Leafs. Wendell Clark being the exception. He did come back and retire as a Leaf. So I'd hate to see that happen. But Marner is. Right now, Marner's stock among the fans and maybe among the team, I don't know. I mean, I think that it's unfortunate the cameras caught that moment of him arguing with Nylander on the bench and that kind of thing, and that's stuff that probably wasn't big, years ago before there was a camera on the bench all the time. But losing him is not as big as losing a Sundin. You wanted him to retire a Leaf, and of course, he was a franchise leading scorer. Marner, obviously, 100-point winger, the potential to be that at least. It would be a shock to lose him because he is one of the pillars of the core four, and a drafted player, a Toronto drafted player too, that they want to. He probably sees himself staying. Probably, before this year and all the trouble at the end, he probably wanted to remain a Leaf, sign one more big contract, and see that out. It's going to be interesting to see if he decides that he could go somewhere and maybe be the star. We ran a story earlier this week on possible destinations. He could go. He could go to Chicago and play with Bedard and do quite well. He could wind up in Pittsburgh with Dubas. There's a lot of good landing spots. People would be able to accommodate Mitch Marner and have him be Mitch Marner as he is now, without this what apparently is going to be a kind of a butting heads with Craig Berube and through training camp and next year that everybody's progressing. But to your earlier point, this isn't as bad as Sundin. If it happens, it happens, and people right now want to see. They want to see a good return, I think, for Marner if he's not going to stay. And it would be interesting to see if he doesn't go. Everyone was mad at Matt Sundin and the Muskoka 4 or 5, if you remember those days, and they wouldn't waive their no trades and became very unpopular. It would be interesting to see everything come full circle of Marner being so well loved in Toronto and suddenly cast as the villain in all this. That would be an interesting scenario come next autumn.
Well, Lance, we thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday to come on with us again. We very much appreciate it, and we hope that you enjoy your travels, because you're doing some travel work with the Sun now too, aren't you?
Yes, big feature today on our trip to San Diego in today's paper, and it'll be online pretty soon. And watch for more of those. That's the one unfortunate thing about covering the Leafs, is that you suddenly find yourself with after the first round with extra time to go. So I'm very grateful that the Sun allows me to do some travel pieces in the summer.
That's awesome. So we will definitely check that out.
Yeah, so I do look forward to doing that. Doing a long Stanley Cup run at some times and having you guys along with me for sure.
Yes, hopefully that will be as soon as next season.
Yes,
so
definitely,
everyone keep up to date with the Leafs and buy a copy of the Toronto Sun. You can also get Lance's articles directly to your mailbox by visiting torontosun.com. And don't forget to follow him, Lance, on X. He is at Sun Hornby. Thanks again, and we will talk to you again hopefully within the year.
Thanks a lot, ladies.
Thanks, Lance. Okay, so thanks again to Lance for coming on the show. From his comments on Marner, I got a small hint that Mitch might be a Leaf still starting next season. I don't know if you feel the same, but what did you take from his comments about Matt Sundin's contract situation and Marner's upcoming contract status with his?
Well, the thing that struck me with that is how different the different generation of Leaf fan views that. For us, being a little bit older, the kids that are kind of watching this team now, that may be in that 20 to 35 range. They were really young when that happened. And I think a lot of them still view Matt Sundin as their hero and don't carry the same kind of bitterness that we feel, when he didn't waive his no move and, allowed us to get better as a team, knowing that he's probably, going to be leaving or whatever eventually. And I kind of wonder how those people will feel if, like you just said, Mitch Marner could stay here, and if he doesn't, agree to, waive his no move, and we end up not getting him, and maybe he walks at the end of next year or something like that, or he stays and we still don't get anywhere. How is he going to be viewed by these? This generation's fan, who were young at the time when Matt Sundin, pretty much, it wasn't exactly the same type of scenario, but like Lance said, everybody wanted Sundin to retire as a Leaf.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's all about making the team better. And
that's the main difference here too, is the fact that they're at different points in their careers, right? Like
100%,
Matt's was going to be ending his career, or closer to the end of his career, whereas Marner is most likely he is going to go on and be a great player. Like he is a great player,
no matter
right?
where.
So no matter where. And if we don't get anything for him, like how is today's younger generation fan, how are they going to view that? Right? I don't think they're going to view it very positively. I don't know.
Yeah, I have to say I've carried quite a bit of bitterness towards Mats for a long time.
Yeah.
Seeing him in Sweden though this past year, I have softened quite a bit.
Yeah.
And
we both have quite a bit.
So I have a different perspective a little bit on it now. But at the time, we're the age that these young kids are now. And so, you kind of see it a little bit differently, as an adult versus, when it's kind of your more childhood hero type thing. So,
yeah, I don't know. But it was great. All the comments that Lance made about Mitch and just some of the history too of the Leafs that he mentioned there. And just the thoughts on Brad Treliving and where he might be, his direction of the team in that. It's great that we have Lance on as a guest. And
he's got like a unique perspective. I find that the way he views things and his knowledge base isn't exactly the same as everybody else. So he's got a unique take on things, and he's just very, very smart and I know he's not just knowledgeable, but I think he has like a little bit of empathy, and he just gets a sense of, where the players are at. He's got that unique ability to be kind of on the pulse of that.
He has a little bit of wittiness about him too, sometimes in his comments, which is
very
always
fun to have on for sure.
Yeah.
So just a reminder that we are going to be talking Leafs all summer long. Our patio season is about a month away. So just hit that follow or subscribe button wherever you listen to our show, and you won't miss an episode.
You can also watch the show on YouTube, where we have a ton of videos from games we've attended at Scotiabank Arena. We add video content throughout the season. So again, hit the subscribe button if you can, please, and you won't miss anything. At the same time, please consider leaving us a rating or a review. 5-star. We'll accept 4-star. Right. Any rating or review, we'd really appreciate it. It's easy on Apple or Spotify, and it's important for our show to get recognized as a source for Leafs content. And we thank you for taking the time.
And another way to help us out is by visiting our Ko-fi page at Ko-fi.com. You can follow us there, and if you choose to, you can support us by buying us a coffee. Any donation goes towards helping us produce the show and making it even better for you. You can find the link to our Ko-fi page on all our show notes or in any of our social media profile pages.
And as always, we want to take time to thank our healthcare workers and first responders for everything that they do.
We thank you as always for listening and watching Ladies Talking Leafs, presented by Bet Online. Until next time, go Leafs, go.
Go.
Do you believe?